Hey everybody, welcome to the cave again. Welcome back to my little closet. And today we're going to be talking about how to practice painting. Over the years I've got a lot of different students that have come to me and they spend, 5 hours in a classroom with me every week, and they often ask, what can I do during the week to get better? And the first thing I always say is, the most important thing, have a sketchbook. Okay, before you go further, just have a sketchbook and make sure you draw on it every single day. And then, basically, informing this presentation, I put together some different, I'll call them the top 10 things, once again, do's and don'ts, of practicing painting. Because when we start off painting, oftentimes we go through different levels of learning. So often when we're starting off in the beginning, there might be a really steep learning curve. We're learning about painting, we're learning how to put it on, we're learning what mediums do, all these sort of things. And then we kind of plateau for a while, and then it's like, how am I practicing? I'm not really getting better. I feel like I'm stuck in a rut. I feel like I'm spinning my tires, right? So I put together this list of things that you can do and incorporate into your own life and your own studio practice and help you get better as well. So let's jump right into it. The importance of the studio. Okay, the first thing which is important to note is that you need to have a space dedicated to creating. I've had spaces in very odd situations before. I used to live in a kitchen in Flagstaff, Arizona, and it was a really small kitchen. I had literally this much space to paint. So I got a Julian, or one of those tabletop easels that folds up, and I put it on this little miniature table, and it had a drawer that could pull out, and I could put my paint thinner there, a little bit of linseed oil, and I could store my paints inside of that box as well. So I literally had just, 2 feet, basically, in order to paint. And I was next to the oven, so not a good place to be, by the way. Painting next to the food, probably not a good idea. But anyway, especially with explosive stuff, even a worse idea. But what I'm saying is, no matter where you're at, figure out a space that you can dedicate to painting. And when you get into that space, it's going to automatically feel like, this is the space I'm supposed to be working in, right? So it's the thing about it, if you're going to the gym, and once you get to the gym, you're like, I guess I'm not going to go on the Stairmaster, I got here, but I just don't really feel like working out now. Going on the treadmill. Ugh, right? You're not going to be like that because you're already in the gym. So once you get into the gym, you're going to start working out. The studio should create that same type of mindset. And we'll get into some distractions and how to manage those later as well. But get into a mindset of creation. I'm sitting in this chair. The first thing is literally to get your butt into a chair. Sit there in your studio space. Sometimes I have students, they're like, well, I get to my studio and I just don't know what to do. Well, that's going to be your practice for the day then. Okay? Your practice is going to be figuring out what you're supposed to do, and that's your studio practice. But you got to devote some time every day to being in a studio and creating an environment where you can work. Now, as you can see here, different studios for different painters vary greatly. Here we see Francis Bacon in his studio, which was notoriously messy, and down here we can see some different probably source materials and rags and books and stuff like that. He's got all his brushes and stuff here. There's kind of a cockpit. I like to think of it as a cockpit, actually. There's kind of a cockpit which is set up for painting. It's like a drum set, basically, you could say. A really good drummer is going to know he's going to want his toms in a certain place and want the bass drum in a certain place for his body. So figure out how to set up your little cockpit for painting and be able to do it. It's really the first step. If you come into your studio and your palette has a bunch of paint on it, you got no paints on your palette, you've got a brush that's crusty and now you got to go, deal with that for 20 minutes trying to clean it, you're never going to start painting. So make sure that space is set up and ready to go at the end of every session. Don't leave it, in a state where you can't continue painting. Francis Bacon's studio may be really messy, but I bet it really works in a way for him as well. You can even see on the wall he's got these different things putting up on the wall. That's a great thing to start doing in your studio. I got to start putting some more stuff. I got some of my daughter's drawings over there. I need some more stuff up in my closet, actually. But, use your walls to put inspirational thing. If you find a painter, if you have access to a printer, print out those paintings that you like. I can't stress this enough. I don't have the book here. Oh, wait. I do. Yeah, here's my book. So here's my book. And this is all stuff. I had access to a printer. So you just don't know. There's Van Winnen. Here's just some desert scenes, right? You never know what, just all this stuff. I have hundreds and hundreds of things I printed out because it was free. That's a good price. But I have a lot of stuff that I would print out, and it's good to have physical copies. Get those things up on the wall and start creating like a cocoon of your inspiration and your ideas in that space. And keep adding to it. Write down notes. Look at my notes. Here's some notes, right? Write down notes as well and put those notes on the wall. Write on the wall. Use the blackboard paint if you want. Get that blackboard, black paint, and some chalk, and be able to write on the wall itself. Or just buy the big roll of paper and roll out a big piece of paper on the wall. A place to keep inspiration, a place to keep ideas, brainstorms, all these sort of things. And see your progress. Create that cocoon of, creativity that you can happily work in. It takes time. It won't happen immediately. I'm setting up a studio right now that I'm going to be teaching out of as well. And it's still pretty bare. It doesn't feel super cozy yet. It just takes time. And artists will eventually form their own nests. And they're all different. Here we can see Piet Mondrian's studio. Believe it or not, look at this easel right here. And he incorporates his squares. He's just, this is a super famous painting of a tree that he did, an earlier one of his works. But you can see everything is about the square. Really. He's got this nice stove. Man, that would be nice. I feel like a stove would be a really nice thing to have in a studio. Just to give your mind a break every once in a while. Chop some wood, put it in the stove. Yeah, sign me up. So everybody's got a different studio. The first thing, if you've got to practice, you've got to have a space to practice in. So create that space in your home, or if you're lucky enough to be able to devote a room to your studio. As I've said before, I'm in a closet, so it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Be wherever you want to be and create that space that's devoted just to making art itself. One book that's I found really interesting that goes into this concept of an artist's studio is this book called What Painting Is by James Elkins. And I just thought this was a really awesome book because he likens painting to alchemy, actually, and thinks about it. He says here, where's this section? Alchemy provides a magical language to explore what is a painter really doing in his or her studio. The smells, the mess, the struggle to control the uncontrollable, the special knowledge only painters hold of how colors will mix and how they will look, right? So it's a really interesting look at painting as a way of alchemy, as a way of making, and that studio production area really is a place where these things can be manifest in a way. So create that, a lot of studios back in the day, who was it? Rembrandt, who's right here. I'm like, why is Rembrandt here? Because I was thinking of it. Anyway, Rembrandt had a lot of different stuff. He had like 4 arms, okay? He had 4 human arms in formaldehyde jars, all right? And then he had like a stuffed crocodile. He had all sorts of stuff. And curiosities that was like a thing you could do. There was a guy named Hans Hofmann, not the second Hans Hofmann, but the Hans Hofmann who is obsessed with Albrecht Dürer, late 16th century. And King Rudolf in Prague actually asked Hans Hofmann to be his collector of curiosities, so to speak. He's a painter. He made a bunch of really interesting paintings as well, of birds and things like this, if you want to check out his work. But really, he was tasked with creating all these different things. And we can think about what it is to have a bunch of curiosities and objects in your studio that spark imagination and creativity. A lot of it's about looking in a certain way. You want to have objects that you can look at, that stimulate the way we look, because essentially that's what we're doing as artists, is that we're looking and we're creating most of the time. So surround yourself with interesting things that you can look at, you can draw from, you can paint from, all these sorts of things. A really good video series is just called What Do Artists Do All Day? And they look at artists' different studios. And I think it's a really good way to look at the practice that artists develop. So oftentimes you'll hear that artists have a practice. What is your studio practice, right? And so an artist practice simply means what they do pretty much every single day. And one really famous artist practice is Stephen King, who just worked from like 10 o'clock in the morning till around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So when you look at Stephen King, you think, wow, how did somebody write The Stand, right? That's a huge book. And he's written 30 or 40 of these, like 50, I don't know, probably more. How does he create so much work? It's a very consistent practice. He's got an awesome book, which I also suggest checking out just on writing. But it's an awesome book for anyone involved with the arts, just trying to get involved with daily practice and routine. And I think it's called On Writing, actually, by Stephen King. So if you find that book, that's a really awesome book. But essentially what he does is he works around 5-6 hours a day writing. Wakes up, used to probably have a cigarette and this sort of thing. I don't know if he does that anymore. But wakes up, has breakfast, kind of gets in his studio, gets situated, and then writes for about 2 hours, takes a break, has lunch, lets things digest a little bit, then goes back to work for about 3 or 4 more hours. So in the end, it's like 5-6 hours of work every day. Take that times 30 days, because, you do it every single day. All of a sudden, it's 180 hours of work in a week. So think about that practice. How can you maintain a certain studio practice that you do every single day? And you're going to find that, this consistency will naturally lead to a habit forming, and that habit is going to just really cue your practice in. You're going to be practicing when you don't even know it, right? Because what you want to do is get better at something, essentially. That's why you want to practice it, right? So there's different ways of practicing, and I could get into that as well. The different ways we think about practicing when we're trying to deliberately practice, and that's what we're seeing right here, of course, is deliberate practice. So we're looking at de Kooning, right? This is a whole section that you can think of. De Kooning goes into his studio every day, and it doesn't matter if you don't like de Kooning. Just look at the painting and think of what type of practice this painting would take to come into existence. Now, a lot of what de Kooning is doing is dealing with the complete abstraction of the form, the complete reduction of the form into very simple planes, right? So we can see the eyes up here and the idea of a form with 2 legs coming down here. We can kind of see a woman here. Now, this is the goal, and I get into other parts of this later, but the goal is to have this consistent practice of looking at a human figure and breaking it down into abstract, simple shapes. That's something that can be practiced every single day. It's quite different than, academic drawing, for instance, where we see a different type of practice develop. But think about it as, what am I practicing every day? Start getting into your head, what is the deliberate practice that I'm engaging in at this moment? What is it that I want to get better at, right? So with de Kooning, this was abstracting the figure into these simple forms. That's something he practiced every single day, making that picture plane as flat as possible. Look at how flat this is. It's supposed to be flat. It's abstract expressionism with the figure in it. Okay, so that's the practice. Think of what is your practice in that regard, and really pinpoint what it is you want to get better at. What's the end game, so to speak, the long-term goal, in a way. Todd McFarlane, who has a really interesting video that you can watch as well online, but Todd McFarlane talks about practicing one thing every week and getting good at it. So one week he would do hands, the next week he would do arms, the next week he would do faces, the next week he would do feet, whatever. And he started thinking about, I could just learn one little thing every single week, but it's a really good way of thinking about compartmentalizing. Okay, I got to learn this. I'm going to just do this for a week. It's a very different mode of practice than de Kooning. The goal is completely different. So if you want to practice effectively, you have to know what is at the end of the tunnel. What is the thing that you're trying to do? Do you want to draw like Todd McFarlane? Or do you want to paint like Willem de Kooning? And a lot of this comes from looking. You got to look. It's like readers or writers, people often ask, how do I become a writer? And the number one way is you have to read a lot as well as write a lot. So with painting, absolutely suggest looking a lot at paintings as well as painting a lot of paintings as well. Figure out what that long-term goal is and how you can engage in deliberate practice consistently to form habits to help you achieve that goal. Now, a lot of times when we practice, we look at this cake here, and that looks like it's got a cupcake, might be a cupcake variation. And there's a term that I heard back when I was at the Lime Academy of Fine Arts, which was, you're painting like, you don't want to paint like you're decorating a cake. Nothing against cake decorators out there. There's probably some really nice cakes out there. But what they meant is you're kind of just squishing. You're not looking at overall forms necessarily. You're kind of just endlessly going in circles with your paint. I got to put this here, got to put this here. It's becoming too methodical, right? This is how I paint. This is how I squish the squishy frosting thing, right? That is not going to necessarily be a type of practice that you necessarily can get better at, because you've already got it ingrained in your mind of how you just squish that thing, right? And so you're just squishing the thing and putting the frosting on the cake. It's routine for you. You have to get outside of your comfort zone a little bit in order to get better. So if you find that I can kind of draw this face okay, and then you just fall into, this is how I make eyes, this is how I make a nose, this is how I make a mouth, right? And you fall into all these traps, that's where you're gonna be stuck. That's how good you're gonna draw. You got to go back to looking and observation, and every single time thinking about, how is this eye constructed, right? What is the way this eye is constructed? What happens if I look this way? What happens if I look this way, right? How does it change? Those little things. How do those little things change? Instead of falling into, this is a nose, this is a mouth, this sort of thing. People often talk about this becoming illustrative in a way, which I don't think really pertains anymore. That used to be kind of a pejorative term 20 years ago maybe, that you were an illustrative painter, that you weren't necessarily just observing and creating. You kind of had created this visual vocabulary and were just inputting it into all these different situations. And I don't think that's a good criticism anymore. But you do know people, there's often like an anime trap I think people get caught in, that I've witnessed a lot of people get caught in, where they grew up watching like tutorials when they were, I don't know, who knows when they start watching them, but they keep making their eyes kind of like anime eyes, and they kind of keep making their mouths in the same style. There's like this cuteness that invades the drawing in some way and the eyes get a little bit bigger. No matter what happens, they can't get rid of this like anime remnant. And that can just be from practicing two thing and not one thing too much, and just not going outside of your comfort zone enough to get out of decorating a cake, squeezing the thing, to really just remember to see and observe. So one thing that we think about with painting is think about it as a discipline. So when people say like, yeah, I went to the army, it was the best thing ever for me, it helped me get my life together and all this, right? So think of painting as another discipline, as being in boot camp or a martial arts, which is why I have Bruce Lee here. You're kind of doing something more than just learning how to paint, right? You're not, how do you say it? Think about the reason why you really want to get better at painting or drawing. And this can be bigger than you think in some regards. But think about what is it that motivates you to keep pursuing this goal to get better at painting or get better at drawing. And a lot of it has to do with a certain discipline that it takes. A lot of people just love expressing themselves, and it comes innately almost. They're just creating out of nowhere. But for a lot of other people, it really takes routine practice and commitment, because there's very real deadlines in the art world where you have to create a show by a certain day. And you're supposed to really fill that space with artwork. And they may have planned this show 2 to 3, 5 years in advance. And all of a sudden, you really have to have those paintings at that time, So there's certain deadlines that you have to adhere to. Let's say you want to do 6, huge paintings. You're going to have to even pace yourself. Okay, that becomes a painting every 4 months, every 3 or 4 months, right? For those big 6 paintings. Can you actually achieve that? What happens if you're 5 months in and all of a sudden your time start ticking away? So thinking about compartmentalizing, I know we want to think about artists as being, these bohemians who just wander and magically create things out of thin air. But think of yourself as devoting yourself to a discipline, just like you would devote yourself to learning to roller skate, or learning to cook better, or learning all sorts of different things, right? So art is a discipline just like everything else. Treat it like that. Get a picture of Bruce Lee, print it out, put it up on your wall as a reminder that you're really putting yourself in a situation where you can improve your life through art. And that's part of why I think a lot of people are creating. They want to, add some sort of fulfillment to their life. And structure can often do that in good ways. Now, one thing I do with my daughter is that she draws all the time. And she always has, believe it or not. And one thing she doesn't want to do is observational drawings. And I had to think of a way to get her to do these observational drawings. So what I did was I simply made this little box like this, as you can see, and broke the box into 10 different sections. And then there's level 1, 2, and 3, different colored stars. So for every 15 minutes that she does an observational drawing, she gets to fill in a box. Now, I think this is the thing that I'm doing, and the trick that I'm doing with my daughter, is that when you consistently do something every day, it becomes habit a little bit. And just as, children, they say children need structure and all this sort of thing. But I think we all need some sort of structure. And when we get into a habit, maybe it's reading for 20 minutes before you go to bed at night, that becomes the thing you almost look forward to at the end of the day. Okay, I'm going to read for 20 minutes before I go to sleep. And, you're almost looking forward to going to bed to read for that 20 minutes, even though it's a small amount of time. Think about, I start with 15 to 20 minutes, I think is really good to start because it's an achievable goal. And just from, those theories about how we can achieve our goals, it's better to start with small achievable goals. So I'd start with just 15 minutes a day. See if you can devote 15 minutes every single day to drawing from observation or painting from observation. Keep track of it though. Print it out, and put it on your wall and keep track of it. You can have a little timer, of course, but have something that's trackable so you can see your progress as you go through every day of drawing. This is going to help you in the long run. You're going to be able to see how much time you're actually giving to it. Now, personally, I use they have something called the Pomodoro method, which is 25 minutes of practice and 5 minutes of break. Personally, I prefer 45 minutes. I call it the lasagna method. 45 minutes of work with a 15-minute break. So think about where you're comfortable working at. Do you want to work for 30 minutes, take a 5-minute break? Can you work for 15 minutes, take a 5-minute break? Can you do 25 minutes with the 5-minute break? And you're thinking, what's up with this break? You got to do more than one, okay? So a good place, I think, would be, 45 to 15, devote 2 hours a day to painting and drawing. Just go for 45 minutes, take a 15-minute break, go for 45 minutes, take a 15-minute break again. But break that up. Maybe you can do 30 minutes a day, maybe you can do 20 minutes a day. If you can go 30 minutes a day, if you can only go 30 minutes a day, you might want to try to break that up, into 2 10-minute sections. 10-minute, 5-minute break, another 10 minutes, 5 minutes at the end, or whatever. Break it up, but it's important to think of your brain as a muscle that you're actually working, right? They say that, these top chess players that are playing on like 30 games at once, right? That they're burning like 6,000 calories a day, and all they're doing is playing chess. They're not doing any sort of workout at all, but their brain is just running so fast, it's actually burning calories in their body. So you can get physically tired from drawing and painting. It's a difficult thing to do, and it's frustrating, right? So think about how you can set up breaks in order to best practice, because you're not going to really practice well when you're super tired. So you want to optimize your work versus your break time. But I'd say 2 hours is a great thing to shoot for, but I would start just with 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes a day, and that'll start the habit rolling. And once you get 20 minutes, it's going to be easy to add another 10 after a week or so onto that as well. So think about how to break up your time and how best to practice and to rest your brain every once in a while as well. So another way that you can practice is to simply do the same piece over and over and over again. A lot of times students will not be sure of what subject to paint, right? And in painting, I can understand why they're not sure what subject to paint, because I think often in art school we try to get students to intellectualize things too much, too fast, so they feel like every painting is something completely new and a whole new experience. I would emphasize do the same piece over and over and just stick to tried and true painting themes, right? Self-portrait, figure and interior, figure in landscape, cloudscapes, still lifes, right? Make a still life out of paper and then paint that still life. Make a drawing and then paint your drawing. Do a painting and then do a drawing from that painting, right? Make a sculpture out of a pizza box and paint that. Do the same thing over and over and over again. And you're going to find out that after, you keep doing it, you're actually getting better and better. I think this would be fun to do for a whole year. I should just devote myself to it. I never feel like I have the time, like I'm sure many as you as well do. But I think it would be a really cool exercise to try to do for a year. Do every month a different subject, or maybe every week, do a different subject for that week. Like only do eyes for an entire month, right? Only do paintings of eyes. Maybe they would switch into something else completely by the end and you're just dealing with a circle or something like that. Who knows? But focus on one thing for an entire month and then switch for 12 months. I think that could be a really interesting project for somebody to do. But do the same thing over and over and over again. It's a simple way to practice. We look at Rembrandt. Here's his first self-portrait. I'm guessing, I don't know, 16, 19 or something maybe. Or probably, no, yeah, I don't know. Early self-portrait, right? I'm just going to run through some of these. Rembrandt's known for doing tons and tons of self-portraits. Another self-portrait. He did 80 total. You not sure what to do? Do a self-portrait. Just paint yourself. These are chronological too, by the way. So you can see him aging, which is kind of interesting as well. So here's his last one he did. And commit to that. Self-portrait every day for 30 days. That's going to be, you're going to be able to really see a beginning point and really see an end point. And that's going to be a clear way to practice every single day. Now, when you're doing those self-portraits, what I would encourage you to do is don't get too caught up in any little details every single day. Think about big masses, big shapes, right? What are the big main forms of the head, main forms of the nose? So you're not just merely looking at observational, this is darker, this is lighter, but you're also thinking about the construction of the head. And this can be important in anything that you're doing multiple times. Let's say you got to do just penguins. You got to do penguins for 30 days, right? So all of a sudden those things can just be broke down into those simple shapes as well. So you're not just doing observational drawings of penguins, but you're thinking about the construction of the forms, those big, simple, primitive shapes, cones, spheres, cubes, these sort of things, and how that penguin is constructed. Do it for a month. Repeat yourself over and over and over again. It's totally okay. Painting and drawing is one of those places where it's completely normal to repeat yourself again and again and again and again and again. Now, another thing which is really important is just observational sketching and drawing. I can't tell you how many times people refuse to believe this. Students over the years have come to me, and I always say, are you doing observational drawing? Because I can tell they're not by looking at their paintings. They're not doing enough observational drawing because the paintings aren't drawn well. The construction of the painting is not good because the drawing isn't good. And what do we talk about when I say that? You're thinking, what? The drawing and the painting, right? The drawing and the painting is that preliminary sketch that we start off with when we're painting. If that's off, no matter what you do as you put more paint on it, it's not going to get better, right? So you got to start off with a drawing that's really, really solid. It's best to start off with a sketch, and that sketch should be edited from like 5 or 10 other sketches that you've done. So if you really want to paint something, do like 5 or 10 sketches of it, and then start painting after you have done those 5 or 10 sketches. But observational drawing is also super important. Going back to my daughter, that's how I tricked her into making these boxes. I give her a reward, by the way, after she gets 10. She doesn't have to just have 10 and it's like, yay, this is your yellow star. No, I get her a present for every time she gets 10 of these as well. So there's some motivation there too. Maybe you could treat yourself in some way. I don't know, take yourself out for a hot fudge sundae if you want to. But give yourself a reward if you do 10 boxes. I do this. I think I got it here. So I got it right here. This is my little thing that I came up with. I know they're kind of ridiculous because there's not 5, but I just do 3 and then this way. And then that represents 1 hour, basically, or 15 minutes of some activity. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm teaching myself right now to write and draw with my left hand as well, because I was just thinking, sometimes my right arm gets tired, basically. And so it'd be cool, and I've been thinking this forever, like, maybe I should, learn to paint and draw. I've always been kind of good, drawing and painting drawing and writing with my left hand anyway. So I started from a pretty good place. But think about how to keep track of that practice every single day. So this is how I'm doing it. In my off time, I'm just banging out 15 minutes. Now, one thing I did with my daughter as well, this is a little 15-minute drawing I did with her. She's 9 years old. She looks older here, but it was quick. It's 15 minutes. Here's my materials: blue Prismacolor, watercolors, and this watercolor brush that you fill this little reservoir thing with water. So you don't even need a cup of water. You can just use that brush right there. And these are just quick little sketches I do and little value studies. So I'm just banging these out. And this was her idea, actually. She said, we had a challenge, because it's all about the challenges, of course, with YouTube. But she's like, the challenge should be, we do a 15-minute drawing of each other, then we do a 5-minute drawing of each other, and then a 5-second drawing of each other. I wish I would have had the 5-second ones here, and of course that one is the best. But anyway, that's how I bang these out, and that can be a fun thing to do as well. To start with a longer drawing and then go faster and faster. Most people think, we're going to start with gesture. That's good too. It's good to get loosened up. Start with gestural drawings. But I think it's interesting to work backwards as well. Start with a longer drawing, then go simpler as well. So you can practice in that way too. And you don't need much to paint. Practice with painting. Because with painting, essentially what we're doing is using a brush to create big swaths of value, right? So we can translate this into oil paint or another type of paint quite easily. But just with one of these little brushes, I think it was like $3, that Prismacolor watercolor set, and you're good to go. I use brown paper as well, just because I like it. I think another good thing to do can be to go on these epic tutorial sessions. I've done this a couple times as well, where you just load up a bunch of tutorials about a certain subject and then draw from that. And it's good because they're timed as well. And, there's a bunch of different, just search for step-by-step drawing hands or step-by-step drawing eyes or these sort of things. And do a bunch of those all at once and, try for maybe 2 hours of just drawing hands. If you want to get really into it, you can make yourself, there was a book called Drawing the Natural Way by, what was his name? Nicholas something. Anyway, and it had this big schedule in it, actually. It was a big box with all these different assignments to do every day, and it was like, okay, you got to do 40 minutes of gesture drawing today, you've got to do 1 hour of observational drawing, right? So you can make up your own schedule for the entire week if you want to really devote yourself to practice. So we're, again, going back to the gym, we're thinking about, okay, I'm doing my abs one day, then we're doing my quads the next day or whatever. But just vary it. And we're also giving ourselves breaks occasionally. I wouldn't even take a day off. I don't take a day off from drawing. But that's just because it's my habit and I get kind of weird if I'm not painting and drawing for a while now. So think about how you can, practice every single day. Bring up a bunch of tutorials. Maybe that's your Monday, right? Tutorial Mondays. I'm going to spend an hour doing tutorials every Monday this month, right? And then Tuesdays I'm going to do observational drawing. Wednesdays I'm going to do gestural drawing. Think about how you want to break these things up and devote a little bit of time to them every single day. Another big thing when you're starting out is simply do a series. Now this is kind of similar to what I was talking about previously with a theme, like doing a self-portrait, with all the Rembrandt self-portraits. But pick a subject, then make a deadline for when you want to be finished. This can be really good practice to just being what artists do. When we talk about that video again, what do artists do all day? A lot of times they literally just have a deadline and they've got to make these paintings for that deadline. So what else do we need besides a deadline and paintings? We need a subject. We need something to tie them all together, right? So think of, it can be a really big umbrella, simple subject that ties all your work together, and just focus on that one thing. Here we've got Monet's haystacks, right? So he just painted haystacks all the time. He'd just go out and paint haystacks. What are we doing today? I don't know. Looks good for another haystack, right? So just painting haystacks every single day. And now, of course, he's the the best painter of haystacks that we could ever imagine. Everybody loves the haystacks, but he has a simple subject, committed to it, haystacks at different times of the day. All of a sudden, we're creating an entire world. But for you, somebody who wants to get better, somebody who wants to practice, think about that subject. It can be broader, it can be more complicated as if you wish as well, right? So your subject could be about, humans' relationship to nature, right? We're like a species that's been taken out and we're no longer feral and we've been domesticated or something like that. And you can think about paintings that deal with that subject. So humans in nature, tame humans in nature, domestic humans in nature. That could be the whole subject of a series of paintings that you could work on for a year or 2 years or 1 month. But pick a subject. What is that subject that you're actually digging into, that you want to get better at, and that you want to make paintings of? More importantly, always make paintings of stuff you want to create. Don't waste time making stuff that you don't care about, right? You can use time to deliberately practice certain elements because you want to get better at them, but you want to get better at them because you're actually interested in the subject itself. So always do the best that you can to pick stuff that you're interested in. I can't stress that enough. So many people, I think, quit painting because they're painting stuff that doesn't interest them. Okay, turn off your phone and Wi-Fi. Now, I know this will freak a lot of people out, but distractions destroy creativity, okay? Maybe you want to have a podcast on. That's okay, Hopefully, you can download the podcast. There's this thing with, you look at the Instagram feed, it's endless. It never stops. You just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. You look at the way games are made these days. They're made to never end. It's like you're entering a separate world altogether in this game, okay? And those things can be a lot of fun. I play all the time. I actually have a really odd, creative way of using my time while I'm gaming. I could get into. Now's not the time. I'll do it after this. But turn off your Wi-Fi and turn off your phone. And you're not going to find any urge to use it. Because I think when we're talking about painting, we're really engaging in an activity that requires an attention span. And now we're in the attention economy, right? Everybody's battling for attention. I'm supposedly battling for your attention right now as we speak. And YouTube wants your attention, and Facebook wants your attention, and Instagram wants your attention, and Twitter wants your attention, and Reddit wants your attention. All these things want your attention, and they want you to devote as much time as possible on their platforms. It's built into the platform itself. They want you to become addicted. They want you to wake up and check your Instagram feed immediately before you do anything else, right? That's the goal. They create them to be addictive, and they're hindering your ability to actually reach your goals because you're scrolling away all day, right? I don't have any problem with people using social media, but don't let it interfere with what you're trying to do. And identify it, especially when you're devoting time to an activity you want to get better at. Identify that feeling, that urge you have to go to your phone and check it, right? Put that into your head as a marker. Oh, Facebook wants me to do this. It's important to turn it off because you'll be drawing. You know what's going to happen? You're going to be drawing, and then all of a sudden, bing, bing, right? And then you have to look, right? Because Aunt Claire just sent you, a gif of a sloth. So turn off your phone. Turn off all your notifications. Do whatever you have to do. If you got to have something on, turn off your notifications so you don't hear the dinging and all this stuff. If you want to listen to a podcast or you want to listen to some sounds while you're painting and drawing, I understand that. But just eliminate the urge to go online and waste your time on all these different websites that do want to waste your time. They really do. There's actually apps you can install in Chrome, I know at least, and they literally just let you block certain websites for a certain amount of time. Just type in like block website Chrome plugin, and you'll probably find them. And you can just put a list of sites on there and just say, I'm not going to be visiting any of these sites for the next 2 hours, and just block them. Another thing I think that is really important is with painting and drawing, so famously Gauguin, Gauguin in his later years was like literally rotting. Okay, his body, he had syphilis so bad, he had sores all over his body, and he was like dying for years and years, and he was a morphine addict as well. And he made really, really beautiful paintings. So good for you, Gauguin. In this day and age, I think it's important for artists not to fall into the traps of addiction and make sure that we have healthy minds. And I think a lot of times this involves doing activities that help our attention spans. So what helps our attention spans? Not engaging with Twitter and Instagram and 2 screens at once, but going back to these, exercising, just running, feeling your breath, exercising in any way that you can. Reading. I did this thing. I always wanted to read books, and I know I'm stuck on this 25-minute, 20-minute way of living my life. I think it drives some people crazy, but I decided I'm just going to try to read at least 20 minutes a day. And I started getting back into these books I liked when I was younger. It wasn't serious reading. I wasn't reading just about like complicated art books and Deleuze and this sort of stuff. I was like, I'm just going to read Stephen King. I loved reading Stephen King when I was in high school and junior high and stuff like that. So I'm just reading 20 minutes a day, different Stephen King books. And I think it's good to just break, this obsession with screens and get back into attention, right? So reading is another one of those exercises that's really about building your attention, and we need that sort of attention span if we're going to be painting and drawing. A lot of times people think they're not good because they can't concentrate, because they don't have an attention span that's long enough. And for them, I would encourage figuring out how long can you go, then take a break, and then get back into it. If it's 5 minutes, do 5 minutes, right? Do whatever you can. Do 2 minutes, but you're committed to this, and you're going to do well at it. So give yourself that time and know what you can do every single day. With exercise, exercise has all sorts of obviously good benefits. But one of them, I think, is that just simple exercise, getting in your 10,000 steps every day or whatever, walking around the block. If you're lucky enough to live somewhere that has some nature trails of some sort that you're always walking by and you're always driving by, just park and go walk for 15-20 minutes. Decompress from this world a little bit. Turn your phone off again for that 15-20 minutes and just go for a walk. The other thing, which we can't do right now, of course, very easily, is travel. But go out and see the world as well. This is from American Werewolf in London, if anybody's wondering. But go out and see the world as well, and travel and just stimulate your mind and have new experiences. And that's only going to help and translate into your artwork as well. So read, exercise, travel, get out of your house, see nature, and slow yourself down a little bit as well. So this is what I was talking about as well before, picking a monthly or a weekly theme, sticking to it. Here we've got Emilio Villalba, who's, he makes a lot of different paintings now, but a lot of his first paintings that got a lot of attention were just these paintings of all these different eyes. So I think it could be interesting just looking at eyes, using different colors for them. You can dig deep, do a deep dive on any single subject, and really focus on it for an entire month. I think that would be an awesome way to practice and set a pretty big goal. A month is kind of hard, as we know. Trying to do anything for a month is tough, as we know in February when our New Year's resolutions come due, right? So think about a month time frame. What can I make in 1 month centered around some certain theme? Another thing is to deconstruct your paintings and drawings into simple shapes. So here's a Picasso, and the bull, of course, which he did throughout all the years in many variations as well. And here we see the bull starting off, kind of a naturalistic looking bull. Then we have a cubist bull, and then we have this kind of Paul Klee looking bull, and then we have this cave painting bull almost, or something like that. But taking that thing that you're drawing and breaking it into different components, right? This is deconstructing drawing. They do this in like concept art sort of stuff all the time, actually, as well, where they'll like be doing characters or something like that, or just trying to get better at drawing and painting, and they'll look at a head and break it into the simple planes of the face. So look at the head, draw the head first, and then try to break that head into the simple planes of the face. And I think this is really good because you're not only drawing and observing and kind of, moving that hand like you need to, but you're also thinking about the construction of that object in your head. And this kind of makes you think about it in a way that's a little bit more abstract, but it also allows you to control it and kind of own it a little bit more too, so you can move it around in space if you need to. So one thing you can do if you got a drawing that you spend a bunch of time on that you like a lot, look at that drawing and make a drawing of that drawing that's just a simplified version of that drawing. Deconstruct it all into these simple shapes. Diebenkorn, this is Richard Diebenkorn, Bay Area figurative painter as well as abstract painter, as well, doing the, just looking at the world, observational drawing, breaking that observational drawing into a completely abstract composition as well. So we can think totally abstractly, and we can also think representationally at the same time. So here's the top 10 things that we looked over in this presentation today. The first was the importance of the studio. The second was deliberate practice. Third is tracking your progress. Fourth is repetition. Do the same thing over and over again. Fifth is observational drawing. Look at the world, set up your own still life, draw it, paint it, use watercolors if you need to. Number 6, do a series of work. Number 7, turn off your phone and block time-wasting websites. Number 8, stimulate your brain with exercise, reading, and travel. Number 9, focus on a weekly or monthly theme. And number 10, deconstruct and reconstruct your paintings and drawings. So I hope this helped everybody out, and I hoped that, you can implement some of these tactics and watch your paintings get better and better. I think another good thing is, I got mine up here. Here's my sketchbook. I wanted to bring up is just label your sketchbook when you start. Put your name on there, and then when it starts. This is a simple thing I learned in high school, but I've been doing it ever since. And then you just always have a clear beginning date and end date for all the archivists who are really going to be interested in all your work. But you can also see this month, I spent 3 months filling this sketchbook or whatever. So figure out how many months does it take you to fill a sketchbook. If a sketchbook has 100 pages, make a goal for yourself. This comes back to that, weekly or monthly theme, but that could be, I just want to fill a 100-page sketchbook in 1 month. So that means I got to do 3.5 drawings a day. So think about how you can do that. 3.5 drawings. How long are the drawings? 20 minutes each? All right. That's doable. You can fill a sketchbook, 20-minute drawing, 20-minute drawing, 20-minute drawing, every single page. Fill it in a month. Figure out how you want to use your time to make yourself better. You can definitely do it with consistent practice. There's nothing better than simply practicing every single day at whatever it is that you're doing, and hopefully that practice will spill over into other elements of your life as well. So if you like these videos, please like and subscribe, and head on over to my Patreon. If you're interested in getting your work critiqued by me, you can actually head over there and check out the options. I got a couple others where I send out some postcards, hand-drawn postcards and painted postcards and stuff like that. But thanks a lot, and let me know if you have any questions.